Hello everyone, welcome back to Magic Monday, and today, after the recent banned and restricted announcement where there were no changes to any format whatsoever, confirmed that Eldrazi Tron is still a deck, I will be covering it. Now, as I said before when I covered Black-White Eldrazi, Eldrazi's are one of my favorite creatures, and I actually do run Eldrazi Tron in Modern deck. I recently performed in a Modern PPTQ, which is a preliminary Pro Tour qualifier, and literally got the halfway point with this deck. I do run a more budget version, so some of the more expensive cards I don't have yet, but I am still working on it. But we're going to cover Eldrazi Tron today, and thank you all for joining. Again, feel free to subscribe to make sure that you keep up to date when I release new content, and leave a comment down below, let you know what you think, or if there's a deck you want me to cover. But moving on to the basic of Tron is the lands. So we have 4 of Urza's Tower, 4 of Urza's Mine, 4 of Urza's Power Plant, and this can generate 7 mana on turn 3, which is great. It covers most of our creatures and does allow you to sometimes get turn 4 10 mana for some of our larger creatures. Going next, we have Eldrazi Temple, which of course is the namesake of the deck. It allows you to generate 2 colorless mana for any Eldrazi spells. And you'll see that almost all of our creatures are Eldrazi, and in fact one of our removal spells is Eldrazi as well, technically. The Cavern of Souls is actually there to make stuff encounterable. It's a one of, so it's not often that you'll run into it, but enough that it's a decent play. Sea Gate Wreckage is an amazing card in the mid game due to the fact it lets you actually draw cards when you're completely hellbent. Ghost Quarters in our deck, and we have a full play set, and it's great because it does generate colorless mana, and it's also land removal for our opponent. So it's good in the early game, good in the late game, instant 4 right there. We also have 2 wastes, which are in there for Path to Exile, Ghost Quarter, anything that really demands that you get a basic land. Blood Moon is a beast against this deck, so you want to make sure that you can generate colorless mana somehow, and these wastes allow you to, even if you have to Ghost Quarter one of your own lands just to do it. And reminder, if you're going to Ghost Quarter your own land, make sure you do it in response to the Blood Moon cast and not afterwards, because that Ghost Quarter is then a mountain. For the Eldrazi, we have a full playset of Matter Reshaper. Matter Reshaper is a 3/2 for 2 and a colorless, and when it dies you reveal the top card of your library. You can then put it onto the battlefield if it's a permanent card with converted mana cost of 3 or less. Otherwise the card goes into your hand. Now let's see, we have lands. Lands are colorless and have a converted mana cost of 3 or less, so you can ramp up into that. We also have a few artifacts later on that you'll see that allow you to ramp up. We also have a full playset of Thought-Knot Seer, and as I said before, Thought-Knot Seer is a great card. It's got Disruption on a stick, the downside being that your opponent can draw a card when it leaves the battlefield, so any exile effects, hell, even any blink effects actually can affect it. We have a full playset of Reality Smasher, that's 4 generic and a colorless for a 5/5 with Trample and Haste. Now, you can actually go Eldrazi Temple, any land, and bam, if you have a Reality Smasher on turn 3, which is a huge burden against your opponent. Now, it also has a bit of hexproof, like semi-hexproof, where if it's targeted by a spell an opponent controls, they have to discard a card, otherwise the spell is countered. We also have 2 of Endbringer, which is 5 generic and 1 colorless, or a 5/5, but its main ability is that it untaps during each other player's untap step. So each untap step, yours, opponent's, whoever, you untap this. You can then tap it to deal 1 damage to a target creature or player, which is great for removing any kind of tokens. Or you can pay a colorless and tap it so that a creature cannot attack or block this turn, which is great for getting in with your Reality Smasher or your Ulamogs or anything like that. Or for preventing someone from attacking with, say, an Exalted Trigger or anything like that. Make sure you do declare those before attacks are declared though. Or you pay 2 colorless and tap it, draw a card. Now, the 2 colorless, you can actually pay that with 1 Eldrazi Temple activation. And lastly, for the Eldrazi, we have Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. He is 10 generic mana, doesn't care about colorless. He came from Zendikar before the whole colorless symbol was a thing. But when you cast Ulamog, you get to exile 2 target permanents. So they can be lands, you can knock them back lands, you can knock back blockers or attackers, anything like that. He's indestructible, and whenever he attacks, the defending player exiles the top 20 cards of his or her library. It's very hard to come back from that one. But that covers up the Eldrazi. Now we're going to go on to the utilities. The first utility we have is Walking Ballista. He is XX for a X, basically. So you pay 10 mana, you get a 5/5 Walking Ballista. You can pay 4 more mana to put a 1/1 counter on Walking Ballista, or you could remove a 1/1 counter from Walking Ballista to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So if you pay 10 mana and you got a 5/5 Walking Ballista out, and they do Dismember against it, in response, you would actually remove all the counters from Walking Ballista and deal 5 damage to the opponent's face, or to remove a creature, anything like that. Or, in the late game, you can actually just start throwing mana into Walking Ballista, because there's nothing else to do, and build up his 1/1 counters, maybe a swing in. You can swing in with Walking Ballista and then activate it. So if you have that 5/5 Walking Ballista, you swing in, it's not blocked, you deal 5 damage, you sacrifice all the 1/1 counters from it, you deal 5 more damage by sacrificing those counters, you just dealt 10 damage to the opponent in 1 turn. So that's a pretty hefty swing. And again, can be done on turn 4, which is huge. Then the last utility we have is a 2 of Karn Liberated. Karn Liberated costs 7 generic mana, and he has a Planeswalker enters with 6 loyalty. And for his +4, a target player exiles a card from his or her hand. His -3 is exile target permanent. Those can target yourself and your creatures. So you need to protect. You know that one of your creatures is going to be targeted in the next turn or so. You want to protect it. You can exile your target permanent, or you exile a card from your hand, which you can then put onto the battlefield by activating his -14 ultimate, where you actually restart the game and leave in exile all non-aura permanent cards, exile with Karn Liberated. Then, since they're outside of the game, they're kind of outside the restart. You get 20 life, you draw, you shuffle up, you draw up, but those exile cards then enter the battlefield under your control. So you can start, if you play it correctly, you can start with 3 lands, 4 lands, an Ulamog. You can start with Thought-Knot Seers, which enter the battlefield and actually do trigger off of that. There's a lot of things that you could actually recur, which is great. We have removal. So we have 2 of Dismember, which there is no way to generate black mana in this deck except for the opponent playing a Orbog, Tomb of Yawgmoth, which is not likely. But you pay 4 life, target creature gets -5/-5 up until end of turn. It's pretty much unconditional removal at that point. You chain 2 of them, you pay 8 life, you can get rid of an Ulamog. But at that point, you're kind of risking it a lot. But it can be done, and it's great for last-ditch efforts. And lastly, we have a Eldrazi spell. It's a tribal sorcery, so it does actually count as an Eldrazi. So 2 mana can be generated by Eldrazi Temple, and that knocks down the 7 it costs. But each player sacrifices all colored permanents he or she controls. Guess what? You don't have any colored permanents. Your opponent probably will, though, which is great because the fact that you basically just wipe their entire board except for lands, and you're still out there with your 5/5 Reality Smashers and your Thought-Knot Seers, and you're just ready to swing in for the kill. Lastly, we have the artifacts. Now, this is where it gets very costly. The Karns are actually very expensive, and the Chalice of the Voids are expensive, but generally the deck is actually kind of cheap, to be honest. Most of the core cards, the Eldrazi's themselves, have rotated out of Standard recently, so it's not a huge deal. You could probably pick up most of this deck for dirt cheap and run a budget version until you can afford the Karns and the Chalice of the Voids. Chalice of the Void, we're running a 4 of, it's XX again, but it enters battlefield with X charge counters on it. And whenever a player casts a spell with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Chalice of the Void, it's countered. So, you play it on 1, you just stopped Lightning Bolt, Serum Visions, Ponder, Giant Growth, Mutagenic Growth, whatever. Anything that costs 1, gone. That does affect you though. So you put it on 1, and you try playing your Expedition map, which we'll go over next. That's countered as well. But most of our deck is so expensive that we're not going to really run into that often. So Expedition map, It's 1 mana. You pay 2 mana and tap it and sacrifice it to search your library for a land card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This is how you fetch up Tron lands or even Eldrazi Temples. And realistically, fetching up Eldrazi Temples should be a concern. You really want to go with a turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer, because that's a bigger play than a turn 2 Matter Reshaper. It really comes down to which do you have in your hand right now, which one can you fetch out. If you can do a turn 3 Tron on board and generate 7 mana for Endbringer or Matter Reshaper, awesome. But you really want to stick with going for Eldrazi Temples beforehand. We also have Basilisk Collar. Now Basilisk Collar is 1 mana for an equipment that equipped creature has Death Touch and Lifelink, and the equip cost is 2. That is amazing on a Walking Ballista or Endbringer. You ping for 1 damage, that whatever you just attacked is dead. But if you really need to, you can throw that on a Reality Smasher and gain 5 life. That's a pretty good swing in Modern. Our last artifact is a 2 mana Mind Stone, which when you tap it, it adds 1 to your mana pool. Or you can pay 1, tap it and sack it to draw a card. Now that's kind of a late game kind of thing. You kind of want to keep the Mind Stone as a mana source for the beginning of the game, but overall, it's just a 1 of mana rock for acceleration, and again, it's also good because it does not affected by Blood Moon. Lastly, we have the sideboard. So the sideboard consists of Hangerback Walker, Extra Basilisk Collar, Grafdigger's Cage, Pithing Needle, Relic of Progenitus, Surgical Extraction, Ratchet Bomb, Warping Wheel, Crucible of Worlds. It's really dependent upon your meta, so I didn't include actual numbers of how much you want to put in there. I mean, Hangerback's great if they Pithing Needle on Walking Ballista, or if you just want to start, if you decide that tokens would be a better option there. Basilisk Collar, again, just more redundancy. Grafdigger's Cage is great against Collected Company. Pithing Needle locks down all Planeswalkers, which is great. Relic of Progenitus, again, any kind of graveyard-based strategy is great. Surgical Extraction, if you're playing against Tron, you could Ghost Quarter one of their Tron lands and then surgically extract it out. Ratchet Bomb's actually good because it's really good against tokens, and I actually am speaking from experience here. I Ratchet Bombed 8 fairy tokens from a opponent's Bitter Blossom, and to me that was when I decided, yeah, Ratchet Bomb's actually a good card. And lastly, we have a Warping Whale. Warping Whale, again, a good kind of against creature tokens because they have a power toughness 1 or less. It's good. It does get rid of Dark Confidants, which is nice. Realistically, though, you're probably going to either use it for the ramp for the Eldrazi Scion, or you're going to use it to counter a sorcery spell if your opponent's heavy on sorceries. I don't run the main board. I actually would suggest running a Spatial Contortion. It's another removal, and it's 1 generic, 1 colorless. Target creature gets +3/-3, so it does count as removal actually. Overall, here's the deck list. I also have it down below in the description if you want to take a look. It's a really fun deck. It's also very aggravating to play against, according to a lot of people. Personally, I enjoy it a lot. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this deck review. It's kind of basic look over how Eldrazi Tron's played. And if you guys have any suggestions for decks you want me to cover in the future, or anything you want to tell me, feel free to leave a comment down below. Make sure you subscribe so you're kept up to date when I release new content. And just have a great day. And remember to burn bright. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.